What's happening? My name is Blake Harris, and you're tuning in to the Music City Mindset. The Music City Mindset is licensed under the NFM network, and we can be found on all platforms everywhere. We are coming to you from the Iconics Fitness Studio. We are happy to welcome Iconics Fitness to the Mindset family, and we encourage you to go check out the Iconics difference at Iconics Fitness. We have an infamous show lined up for you today, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I am not alone. The co-owner of Spontaneous Beauty. He has had pieces of art featured all around the world, and his great-grandfather, Eddie Harold Fitz, taught Earl Scruggs how to play his style of banjo at Mindset Easy 615 on Instagram. My best friend of 3 decades, Evan Butler. Welcome.
What's up, man?
What's up, Easy? So, last week, talking to A West, talking about how hip-hop as a genre is the only genre that really argues passionately about Mount Rushmore, greatest of kind of situation debate. I started realizing that there's another industry that does that, and that's basketball. I saw a video on the LeBron Jordan GOAT debate.
Yeah.
And the way it was described from a guy that was a NBA All-Star was that while LeBron is one of the greatest to do it, he played the game of basketball almost better than anyone. But when you compare it to Jordan, Jordan came into the game and changed the game. GMs had to change their roster. Defenses had to change schemes to be able to play against Jordan. You couldn't necessarily say the same thing about LeBron. Jordan was more of the innovator. But I'm going to take it a step further, because everyone knows Jordan whether you like basketball or not.
Right.
Everybody knows LeBron whether you like basketball or not. But do you know Kenny Sailors? That's actually because if you think about Jordan, it's like the shot, him levitating in Air Jordan, right?
He can fly.
Kenny Sailors invented the jump shot, but I would venture to say the people I interact with on a daily basis don't know who Kenny Sailors is. So I started thinking about how that applies to other industries, other genres. Janet Sobel versus Jackson Pollock. She invented the drip painting technique that he made possible, but we don't know who she is. You start going to music. Big Mama Thornton wrote Hound Dog, but Elvis sold millions of copies. Sister Rosetta Tharpe was one of the first ones to ever put distortion on a guitar, way before Chuck Berry, Jimi Hendrix, any of that, and no one knows their name. So my question is, sometimes an innovator gets immortalized, but more often than not, it's someone who comes by with the innovator's craft and perfects someone else's craft and becomes the greatest. So my question is it better to go into something, being the innovator, innovating and creating a new craft, but you run the risk of someone then seeing your craft, perfecting that craft, and then you go from this state-of-the-art, once-of-a-generation innovator to then forgotten?
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
I would say I'm willing to take that chance. And if there's something that I feel passionately about, and there is, I'm an artist, and one of the great joys of being an artist is you get a chance to see how far you can take something and how good you can get at something. And in my case, I'm really driven to innovate. And if there are things that I do that someone comes along and picks up on and perfects and takes further than I ever could, I think there's some great flattery in that as well, you know? So it really all depends.
Imitation being the best form.
Exactly. And it really all depends on what you're drawn to. And I also just have to say that Michael Jordan is the GOAT.
Yes, he is my GOAT. If we're gonna have that debate, yes, I do put him as my GOAT for sure.
And the simple thing there is that what LeBron has is longevity, and longevity is amazing. But when I think about the GOAT, I think about peak performance and the highest level that can be achieved. And Jordan set a standard that continues to inspire people in all realms. I know because I fall into that category, and I'm not a professional basketball player. So, but I think given the chance to innovate, you know, that's such a great joy of our profession and doing something original, leaving something original behind that inspires other people.
Well, the interesting thing is when you talk about Jordan, I mean, he was the innovator, but he had wild success too.
Mm-hmm.
But all those musicians you mentioned did not.
No.
Those innovators, but the people that came out like Elvis, Elvis or, and so, the interesting thing being an innovator is a lot of times you don't get any of that. You're almost ahead of your time.
Yeah.
You don't get that, like whether it's the financial or the notoriety, a lot of times it's new and different. And it takes someone like you were saying, who just has that broad appeal to take what you did. So being an innovator a lot of times is a sacrifice, and you don't always get, a recognition maybe till many years later but artistically it's the goal, it's what you want to try to do because that's what's rewarding about art,
I think it's a way of living forever, whether you have the notoriety or not. Those pieces you put into that music and those songs, they live forever. We're all going to pass away someday, but those songs will live on. And whether, like we're talking about Elvis and her writing it, it still lives on through his songs. Whether she gets the notoriety, I immediately thought of Leadbelly because, like, he never would have imagined how many people he'd inspire, how much great blues, but he still lives on because of that. No. Most people, I talk to, they know who B.B. King is or, Stevie Ray Vaughan, but they have no clue about Leadbelly,
Well, in your family's sake, with Eddie Harold, I grew up with you, so I know that name and have seen people who don't even know bluegrass know Earl Scruggs, Lester Flatt. But watching some of the interviews, it's like, how did that 5-finger technique just pop into his head? Well, he was taught.
Yeah.
Well, he was, but I will say Earl Scruggs is a unique example in this area. And as a banjo player and a student of Earl Scruggs, I will say he is unique because there was really not a lot of precedent for what he did. So a lot of times when we talk about innovators, they learned what they do in pieces from different places. Nothing comes out of thin air, and humans are imitators in many ways. We learn from what we see. But Earl was really unique, and not just in bluegrass, but in music as a whole, for coming up with a style that, to this day on banjo, what banjo players try to do is emulate Earl Scruggs note for note. And you look at all the other styles, and they've evolved in different ways, and rarely the first thing that came along, rarely is that remained the gold standard forevermore. Now, there are more progressive banjo players, but every great banjo player will tell you that it all fundamentally comes from Earl Scruggs, and that's a very unique thing to do that with very little precedent.
And gentlemen, just a bit of trivia here.
Okay.
Earl Scruggs lived about 1 mile from where we are right now.
And another bit of trivia, Andy Hall played in Earl Scruggs' band, just for a little context there.
Wow.
Back in the day.
That is why I posed this question for the day. I knew that y'all's opinion of it, whether we're talking about longevity, mastering someone else's craft, or innovating your own, I would consider this question, y'all being the experts of this, which is why I asked. For those of you that don't know who we have been talking to this part of the episode so far, this band right here started in Music City 20 years ago. Their first studio album won 3 IBMA awards: Emerging Artist of the Year, Album of the Year, and Song of the Year. Their second studio album hit #1 on bluegrass charts. Their album Laws of Gravity won a Grammy for Best Bluegrass Album. This is our first Grammy winners on the couch. I want to take note of that on what we're doing here with these microphones as well. They currently have 2 different songs that have over 10 million streams each on Spotify alone. That's in bluegrass. That seems wild to me. Congrats on y'all. Their 20-year career has been spent on not only becoming one of the most innovative, creative bluegrass bands of all time, but also focusing on paying homage to the pioneers of this genre. They are here to promote their new album, 2020, which is not just another record, but a milestone project. This album features 20 songs celebrating their 20-year career. That comes out Friday, February 13th. This will come out next week, so go stream it now. Welcome to the show, the Infamous Stringdusters.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank y'all.
So we talked a little bit off air. Y'all aren't from here, but the band was started here. How did the Infamous Stringdusters begin?
Yeah, well, Chris here and I met actually in Boston. Both of us went to Berklee College of Music in Boston at different times, but I went back there for a visit, ended up meeting Chris. And the very first weekend we met, we recorded music together. There was a little group, a few of us, Chris Eldridge, our original guitar player, and we met one night in a pub in Boston and said, hey, we're all here for a few days. Why don't we just try and record something, some young guys, similar mindset, like progressive bluegrass. So we made a recording that weekend. We kind of partied and recorded and just hung out, and literally the first weekend we met, and I came back to Nashville and we listened to that recording, and there was something really cool and unique to the sound. And so, yeah, that was kind of like the original catalyst. I was living in Nashville after that and playing in different bands. And then, I was playing in a band with Jeremy Garrett, who was our fiddle player, as sidemen. And we were all kind of sidemen. Chris eventually moved to Nashville. Nashville just brings musicians together, as we know. And so we all ended up here, but the seed of that original recording kind of was always in the back of our head. And after being sidemen for a while, we realized we wanted to kind of not be sidemen and do our own thing and be our own artist and write our own songs. Being a sideman is great. You don't have a lot to worry about. If everyone else takes care of everything, you just show up, and if you can play, you're good. But being a band, you gotta, you do it all, but you get to write the songs and you get to be the artist, and that's what we wanted to do. So kind of five buddies quit all of our side bands. So we made a date. We said on this date, we're quitting everything. I was playing with Dolly Parton at the time, and she had called me if I wanted to do another tour. And I was like, hang on, let me just double check that and I called my boys and I was like, we're doing this band, right? Because I just want to be sure we're doing this band, because Dolly hit me up about another tour, and they're like, yeah, we're doing it. And so we quit our bands and bought a van and headed out.
Rest is history.
Yeah.
Turn down Dolly Parton
might be the only man to ever do it.
Well, that would be a tough call.
When you put it that way,
put that on the
what
Twitter
have I
bio.
done with my last 20 years? I know. I'm starting to have some regrets.
At what point, for both of you, at what point in your life, I'm sure as a kid, did you know that music is where you're going with your entire life? And was it always bluegrass?
That's a great question. I ask that question on my podcast because I'm always curious to know if there's a moment. And I think in my case, it's hard to point to one moment, but I remember when I got my first banjo, and before I had any business playing with anyone else, and I didn't really know much about music. This was before I went to music school, way before I met any of these guys. I knew that I was much more excited about that than anything that I'd ever been involved in. And it was raw and very underdeveloped, but that's what got me going, practicing 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day in the early going. You hear about that, and it's true. I mean, it might have even been more on some days because there's just simply nothing else that you want to do. And, getting back to that question you were asking about the drive for originality, it's similar to that. It's not something that's really top of mind. You're not necessarily thinking, how can I do things different? You're just sort of answering to this inner calling. In my case, that's how it felt.
Wow.
And as that goes on for a few years and you start to develop some skills, there sort of was no question in my case. And I knew I had to buy myself a little time. So I went to music school for a few years because I didn't start playing banjo until I was 18, which is a lot older than a lot of my contemporaries. But it sounds cliche, but passion is what drives that. That's that sort of inner calling. That's how I think of it. And while there wasn't one clear moment, I can think of a few early gigs where I was on stage and doing something that was connecting with people. And those are seminal moments too, because learning to play music is one thing, but learning to be a performer is a whole other skill. And also something I think that you need to figure out, am I into this? They say there are, a lot of people who can shoot a low score like Tiger Woods, but can they do it in front of the cameras?
Yes.
That kind of thing. And so it's first developing that passion and then getting a glimpse of like, wow, I can do something that really brings people alive and brings people joy. And I'm expressing myself and giving a voice to their feelings and their thoughts. So it's sort of a two-stage process, but I remember both parts of it. And I remember some of those early gigs thinking, wow, this is powerful, not without its significant challenges like anything in life, but well, what a beautiful thing to be able to do. And so once I got a glimpse of that, Andy and I actually played in the same band in Boston. Andy's tenure was before mine. He was at Berkeley before me, but it was playing some of those shows with the Bag Boys at the Plowing Stars and just seeing the joy that it brought to people. And that was a really powerful thing.
Dude, I have such a vivid memory of being at the Plowing Stars. It's an Irish bar in Harvard Square in Boston. And yeah, it was one of those vibes where like, it's just a local band that we both played in, different times, but the pub would be full on like a Saturday evening and, the lights are dim and everyone's cheersing pints. And it's like, you're in like the Lord of the Rings or something. It's just like hot, it's just like everyone's singing songs and you're playing and everyone's dancing. And it's just like, oh my God, this isn't, just a moment. And it wasn't like a huge show. It wasn't like but the vibe and seeing how people react to music, I agree. I had some very seminal moments early on. It's the biggest gigs are not always the best gigs. It's like whenever you're connecting with people and there's an energy in the room.
And it's community. It's a glimpse of one of the things that when you set out to become a career musician, or probably a lot of things, you don't necessarily anticipate a lot of the different aspects that become really profound. And seeing a community form around our music and seeing the connections that our fans make with each other and what they add to each other's lives and how they support and love each other. Again, one of the things you don't see coming, but incredibly, incredibly powerful. And I think that some of those early shows were an early glimpse into that.
I was going to ask what the bluegrass scene was like in Boston.
It was there, it was small, but it's small everywhere.
Right.
But, Boston was, it has a bluegrass scene. And if you're into the music, you find it immediately because there's only, maybe one or two places where it's happening. So that community gets together, and gets tight and you meet so many people. When a scene is small, you get tight with people real quick because you're like, oh, you like the same thing I like. And you get into it. So there continues to be a bluegrass scene in Boston, but, moving from Boston to Nashville, I remember that transition being shocking because, from Boston, you're kind of the big fish in this little pond. And then you go to Nashville and it's like, oh boy, like
everybody can play.
This is a different scene, Yeah. So as wonderful as that scene in Boston was, and it was wonderful in a way because it was so simple and down home and chill, and people were very welcoming, and it wasn't like super competitive, and it was just everyone's learning and enjoying. It's kind of very pure in that way. And then you get to Nashville, it's like, oh, it's business time,
Yeah. So that first studio album, at the IBMA Awards, Cleaned Up. Did y'all know, like when y'all started recording, finally got everyone together and started making that first album together as this new band? Did you know, was there like feelings in the beginning like, oh, we've got something?
Yeah, I think we were really excited about it. That was the gas in our tank. If you're going to say no to Dolly Parton, you better have something good that you're saying yes to. And though it was underdeveloped in a business sense, there was a major sense of excitement. And I got to say that remains in our band. And I know getting ready for tour or looking forward to big shows and now becoming a much more seasoned performer, those are big moments that you get really excited for and you really want to do well at, and that's a big part of the drive. But we were excited. We thought we had something on our hands. And, talking about bluegrass, a lot has changed in the last 20 years in bluegrass music. Bluegrass is much more popular now than it was when we were getting going. So there weren't a lot of options per se. And here we had found 5 like-minded people who, I think the proof is in the pudding. We're still together after 20 years and loving it as much as we ever have. And so that unique synergy is something you don't take for granted. And to have found that in a time when there were, fewer people playing bluegrass by far was something cool and exciting, and something that we were willing to put other things aside for to really go chase.
Well, I definitely want to, I almost interrupted you, but I want you to finish that thought. Hearing you talk about like the change that's happened in bluegrass over the 20 years, as much research as I've done to find out about y'all, it would be hard to convince me otherwise that part of that change in popularity isn't because of y'all.
Right.
And so I hope y'all get those flowers and like feel the impact. I don't think a lot of times in life, like we were talking about earlier, we get to see the impact that we create on this earth while we're still alive, and seeing the popularity over this that has happened in the bluegrass genre. I mean, that it has to come from y'all at some
rock
point.
Stars.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I watch shows, live shows, everything. And, growing up in bluegrass, like, it was a lot of overalls and a lot of the same. And y'all look like a bunch of cool dudes up there playing bluegrass.
Well, overalls might be cool again. I don't know, but
they have come around.
Yeah. I got a pair.
Yeah. They're too hot for me, man. I love that. They look great, but they're just,
Same.
But
I gotta go
if I gotta go work in the yard, maybe. But well, it's cool to hear, and you don't know it's happening if you're influencing a genre. You don't know you're doing it, but it's cool to see like young musicians who are like in, really cool bands right now. They might not even say it at first, but then at some point a conversation comes up and like, oh yeah, I've been listening to you since I was like, 8 years old. I'm like, well, number one, I'm old, but number two, that's epic. And it's cool to know that you have had an impact on these young people. And actually you don't realize until they, you hear from some of these younger people that like, yeah, maybe you have had an impact. And it's interesting to see that wheel turn and see you shift your role from the young innovator into sort of more of a, elder statesman kind of, role. And it's fun. It is a little shocking at first because it's the transition from getting younger to getting older in life regardless, and when you see it in your industry, in your music, and you see the young people coming up and how, badass and amazing they are. And you realize without even knowing it, you've assumed a different position in your career and in your life. And it's fun, but it is a little shocking at first because you're like, oh yeah, all of a sudden we're not the young innovators anymore. Now we're like, mentoring
the trendsetters.
People. Yeah, and it's cool. I love that. It's it took a while to get used to that realization. But.
And it kind of goes back to that GOAT debate we talked about in the beginning of like, you can't really set out to do that. Like you can't just start and be like, I'm going to go in here and change everything. Like I feel like some of that just has to happen
sure
organically. And as I was reading I think it was your third album, Things That Fly. That was the reviews of that basically said that had like that was the album that like solidified your evolving sound into what was that. But I couldn't find any more detail on that. That's just kind of what that album was, how it was perceived. So tell me a little bit more about that album and like solidifying that evolving sound, like we were talking about in the beginning of innovating things and figuring out what is authentic for you. What was it like to get that? And what was your mindset coming out of that once it was like, oh, this is our sound?
Well, I don't think when we set out to do that record or any record, you don't necessarily have a specific goal top of mind. You're really just charging at what you're inspired to do and inspired to create. And I think in the bigger bluegrass discussion, the thing that makes us unique, the thing that we always cared about was we really came from traditional bluegrass. And even though our music has evolved in many different ways, what brought us together was traditional bluegrass. And we were all drawn to some of these fundamental qualities of the music that I think get overlooked when the overalls come into play, right? You think it's like this dated form of music, but it's so fundamentally amazing. The best musical education you could ever get. And when we started 20 years ago, there were sort of these two worlds of bluegrass. There was like the traditional world over here, and then there was String Cheese Incident and Leftover Salmon and the few bands that preceded us that took pieces of the Grateful Dead and the bands that really stretched out on stage and brought those worlds together. And we came more from over here on the traditional side, but we're very inspired and drawn to some of those kind of jammier elements. But that was really our calling card, was bringing the musical fundamentals of trad bluegrass to a style that was more suited to the live environment, collaborating with the crowd, creating a very unique live experience. And I think by the time we did our third record, we were starting to figure that out, and we were starting to bring those things in. And I can think of a few songs, or at least one, where we were trying to then recreate some of these elements on the record, where we would go into a section of a song that had no defined ending. We were going to wait for some musical cue, or we were going to read each other. And we were starting to get to that place as a band where we could really play together in that way, confidently, you know, kind of so familiar with each other's playing and ideas that we could work together and land the plane, if you will, after a section like that. And so I think that's where some of those ideas, that's about the time in our career where we were confidently trying to bring those things together, the sort of tight, musical, amazing fundamentals of the singing and the playing, with the idea that music can be this journey involving the audience in the live environment and create something very unique every night. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through this thing that's so messed up, but it's like you do this first album, it's great, and then they go, well, can you follow it? And then you do the second album, and it's just as good, and they go, well, yeah, but can they get a third? You know, it's like you never satisfy that. One thing I love is, like you touched on earlier when you said that, like, y'all still kept that original excitement, that original energy, and I see it. It looks like y'all are having a blast when y'all are playing together. It looks like y'all are having fun. You see, we go to 1 million concerts a year, and you see bands that have been playing together a long time that look like, man, I just clocked in. I clock out in a little while. Y'all are making eye contact. Y'all are having fun. The audience definitely picks up on it. I mean, and I just think it's a great energy that y'all are giving off. And one thing I love about bluegrass is there's so much on the radio of, like, it's got to be a 3-minute song. And bluegrass breaks that completely. And I love that, because when I was a kid, it didn't matter what genre. Nobody went, hey, this has got to be this time. And a bluegrass song, 6 minutes. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
5
and
minutes,
you
six
brought up
minutes,
Grateful
like,
Dead, of like how bluegrass kind of pulled from that. How do you feel about the term jamgrass?
That's a good question.
That is a good
It's a bit loaded.
Yeah,
as you alluded to. By the way you asked that. Yeah. Well, it's a thing. I mean, whether you like it or not, or whatever you think about it, it's a thing, and it's more a thing now than almost ever before. There is a plethora of, like, young bands coming up who, right from the get-go, are like jamming long, in long improvised sections. Like that's like the ground floor of bluegrass is like jams, and for us, like Panda was saying, it maybe around our third album, we started exploring that more. So, I don't know, jamgrass, one thing about it that's interesting is that I think, is unique about us is that we, like Panda said, Panda's Chris. Is just for the listener, where's this Panda? It's nicknames are just deeply embedded in my brain. Like we studied, like, the traditional bluegrass and learned that, like, and spent years learning the sort of the craft of traditional bluegrass. And sometimes in jamgrass, for better or for worse, that's not really where people are coming from. They're in a way, it's awesome and beautiful because they just get the instruments and just go for it and just have a basic understanding of bluegrass, and they just start jamming, and it's very free, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome, So the term jamgrass, I mean, jam bands, you say that, and some people are just like, oh God,
roll your eyes.
It's like, but jamgrass, I feel like is. It's a loaded term. You can call us jamgrass. You can call anybody jamgrass. But, the thing that we always like to pride ourselves on is knowing the sort of the fundamentals of bluegrass, because it's so fun to be good at that. It's just like, it's enjoyable to get deep into a craft like that. But, if we're jamgrass, that's cool. It's genre labels are weird, but all in the end, we're bluegrass, and that's the term that I like to come back to and that I like to embrace is the term bluegrass. Mm-hmm. If it's also jamgrass, great. If it's also something country, great. But bluegrass is the one where I'm like proud, to play.
Should bluegrass really be looked at as its own separate genre? Because I feel like, to your point, it does almost get lumped under this umbrella term of like country-ish, country adjacent. But should it really be its own separate thing?
Oh yeah,
it is. I mean, it is.
It is, especially these days.
Yeah,
and it's not hard to figure out. I think what bluegrass is, and you get some people who hem and haw about like adding the drums to bluegrass, but the reality is, and this is often overlooked in bluegrass, especially by the traditional people, is that Earl Scruggs, Bill Monroe, the guys who created bluegrass out of thin air, the ultimate innovators. And now we have traditional bluegrass musicians, and a lot of it is kind of more the art of imitation. They want to recreate what that old music sounded like because it's incredible, and I don't fault them for that. And we do that from time to time. That's one piece of the puzzle for us. But bluegrass these days is, in my opinion, firmly in its own lane. And if you've got a rolling banjo played in the style of Earl Scruggs and 3-part vocal harmony and basses playing the downbeat and mandolins playing the upbeat, like you really do have these pieces that you can point to that say this is bluegrass. And there are often innovations in there and ways that people do things differently these days, but you know it when you hear it.
Yeah, this is a debate that goes way back. Is it bluegrass or not? And it's like we've can't come from that and been doing it a long time. It's like, oh, yep, there's that debate again. And it's fascinating because you really do have to think about what is bluegrass or what is not. But in the end, people are just attracted to the music they like, and there's something really unique about, like Panda said, the 5-string banjo rolling and the 3-part harmony. There's something there that just is, if it gets you good,
Well, I think that is a good time to stop for a quick commercial break, and we will be right back here at the Music City Mindset with the infamous Stringdusters.
Introducing our Berry High Seltzer, the ultimate cannabis-infused experience. Maybe you're trying to cut back on the booze or get some of THC's sweet benefits. Our Berry High Seltzer invites you to savor the experience responsibly. Not only is it delicious, but our seltzers provide a federally legal way to unwind.
And we are back here at the Music City Mindset. We are here with the incredible, infamous Stringdusters. Obviously, I want to get to what y'all got coming up. But obviously we have to talk about the Grammy. Laws of gravity. I own a gym, so I deal a lot with the laws of gravity. I want to know the name of that album, like where did that come from? And again, when y'all were writing this album to get a Grammy from this, like, when did you really know it was special? What was it like hearing your name and like actually like going through that process?
It was fun.
It was fun.
It was a huge surprise, probably the biggest surprise I've ever experienced in my life. I mean, we'd been nominated before, but I was sitting next to Andy. I remember when they read our name, and it was just like one of those pure moments in life where you're you're not really expecting anything. In fact, you don't think you're going to win. It just seems out of the realm of possibility. And when we were making the album, I think you always hope that you can be in the running for a Grammy. And we'd been nominated before. So, but one of the most fun nights of our lives, incredibly memorable on so many levels. And when I started out as a professional musician, my parents were like, say what? You're going to be a banjo player? And that wasn't exactly that well received. And I remember it was and now they're incredibly supportive. I love you, Mom and Dad. And that was a process. But I remember when we won, when you win, you go backstage and you do all these incredibly cool things. But I ducked into a little corner and I called my parents, and I knew I didn't have but 2 seconds to talk. And there was not a word exchanged. It was just hysteria on the other end of the line. They were like screaming over there, and hung up the phone and went back. And they were, we were sort of getting in the press line with Mastodon right in front of us, who had just won for Best Metal Album. And it's like, when you're nominated, you get a year of really exciting press. And when you win, it's like, you're in the club for life. It's an accolade that really changes the game. And I think it's a measure of your legitimacy musically, but also the thing that you've built. It's bigger than just the music. We have an amazing team, and that, is all part of it. And it was a really big moment, but it was just a really fun night. You don't get a lot of chances to celebrate what you've done. Your head is down. You're going to the next gig. You're always thinking about the next thing. And there's always more work than you can do in a day. So it truly is unending. And then you have this great moment to celebrate with your boys and reflect on the commitment and the achievement. And that's a special thing.
It's true. It is a moment. You get a moment to like look back, and it's like, whoa, like we've look at all this stuff, all this work, all these hard times, all these things. It's emotionally and spiritually, it's kind of a deep moment, because like Panda said, you get a moment to sort of be like, whoa, okay, let's like take a second, look at where we've come from, all the things that have happened to us, all that we've done. And that's healthy to do, and you don't get a lot of opportunities like that. And you do get a sweet watch too, which is nice.
Do they give you the Grammy that night, or they mail it to you?
They mail
it to you.
Yeah, they mail it, but they give you like a one that doesn't have obviously your name on it, so you get one to like take the pictures with,
Got it.
And but then you have to give it back, and then like months later, and they make them in Colorado. Actually, they make them. We live in Colorado, and they make them at this place in Ridgeway, Colorado, where they make the alloy and they craft them there.
I just can't. Hearing y'all talk, thinking about, and I'm using your words.
I'm glad you didn't get a real job. Just saying.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you turned down Dolly. I don't know if I could have done that, but to hear you talk about this seed that you planted, just recording a random time when y'all weren't even a band together, but that kept like somewhere in the back of your mind, you kept thinking about that seed that was planted, to then actually being able to witness what that seed grew into, it sounds like an incredible experience.
Well, and so much of it is out of your control. You're just you obviously you're working hard and you're doing what you can do, but what if somebody they get a job, or they have a family, or they get sick, or any number of a billion things could happen to derail that. Is hard, even if you're just the hardest workers and are committed. And so you feel grateful just to be able to stand there and be like, we're still here. We made it.
How different had the band member wise changed from the time y'all started till the Grammy?
Well, we've been the same 5 now for 18 of the 20 years, or something like that. And we changed, inevitably there's always a few changes in the beginning. And, like I said, the challenge of keeping a band together of really good musicians who are inevitably going to get offers from other people, that was a very real thing that we were up against. And there was some of that, but then we settled into our current lineup, which it's been that way for many years, and that's rare in bluegrass music. Bluegrass is sort of known for a lot of band members switching, and you can do that, and you can plug right into a band, and you know the stuff, and you can be a contributing member of that band. But we were really searching for something different. We wanted to, again, when we are talking about bringing these other influences in and stretching out on stage and having that real deep shared knowledge of music and what each other are capable of and what we do when our instruments are in our hands, that affords you the opportunity to see how much synergy you can create. And a lot of that comes out in those more unknown moments on stage versus playing that 2.5 minute bluegrass song where everything is just bang, bang, bang. You know how it goes. So yeah, we had a few changes early on, but then we locked in our current 5-piece lineup and haven't really looked back since.
A lot of what we've done for the Music City Mindset, of course, we've never talked to a Grammy winner, but we talk about the awards and the accolades. But what we've really enjoyed talking about was like that grind coming up. Is there something, as you're talking about, like trying to keep that band together, is there something that is appropriate to share of something like a difficult time through the band of like either almost breaking up or with someone leaving or something that you can share about like how you overcame that obstacle to get to the point of having these careers you have now?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's plenty of difficult times, and the band roster changes, which like, you know, there haven't been many, but they are difficult. And leading up to like, you know, like we had 6 people in the band and originally with a mandolin player. We don't have mandolin now. And yeah, that person leaving and what everything leading up to it was challenging because, you know, when you've got a difficulty in the band, it affects everything. It makes you question everything. And, you know, I think what kept us going through every hard time is the passion for the music, but also like we're just friends, you know, we're friends within the band. We're not just like business associates. Like, you know, we like each other, even, you know, although somebody had to leave, unfortunately, but then, you know, they clear space for like, oh, this is really the group that synergetically like works together. This is the 5 people that like want to, and it's a relationship. It's like a marriage in a way. You have to learn how to communicate over the years because you're talking about all kinds of difficult stuff. Whose song are you going to do? And whose song are you going to cut? And, you know, all the stuff. And so you have to, you know, you have to respect and like each other. You have to want to be friends. I don't know how to do this business without melding personal and business together. I don't know. It's like if you're traveling every day with people, you're friends. I don't know how people do it. How do they go for a lifelong band and they're not friends? That's bizarre to me.
You hear about it, but
it must happen. But for me, that's not ever going to be probably my existence in this world. I'm happy to be friends with my bandmates, and I think that's what has always gotten us through the hard times. Is like, these are my buddies, these are my bros, and I don't want to lose that. You know?
And those hard times, they bond you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not necessarily talking about hard times that are potentially going to break up the band, but, you know, it's still hard to sleep on the floor of a passenger van when you're driving all night because your first gig was in Washington State and then you have your next gig is in New York, which is actually, that was an early tour.
An early routing, yes.
An early,
Washington to New York in a van.
And we're talking Washington State here, not Washington, D.C. And so,
wow,
but
that's
when
a trek.
Yeah, I would not recommend
Then the gig after New York was probably Salt Lake or something, you know.
But those times they bond you in a really powerful way. And so you're not necessarily staring down the barrel of like, this thing is going to break us up, but it's not easy. And you better be ready to be poor for the first, 10 years. And that bonds you too, because it gives you a really powerful perspective. Again, coming back to like the things that you didn't necessarily anticipate getting into this business. But as far as our shared relationship with the things that we appreciate in life and getting through hard things together and the unbelievable perspective that gives you, you cannot get that anywhere else. And then it compounds when you share it with other people. And that is an incredibly powerful force. And I know now we've been a band for 20 years and we're way past the point of knowing that this is going to be the thing that we do forever. And that's a beautiful thing. But that wasn't always the case. You know, you do wonder to some extent, can we keep this thing together? I remember thinking that when we had those early lineup changes. But then once you transcend that and you've created something very real, and you're not eating PB&J for dinner, 6 nights a week anymore, and you've actually built something, then you have this perspective that is incredibly powerful and valuable, and you share it with these other people. And that's something you can't create any other way.
Well, and when we're going from Washington State to New York, we were talking about this the other day at an interview, like with our origin story. And something that's really important that I think gets overlooked sometimes is the fact that we had 4 days in a van together with nothing else to do but hang out and like smoke weed and go hiking and make stops. And, you're all of a sudden you got 4 days of like a bro trip.
And no smartphones.
And that when we started, there's no, so you're not, you got to do, all you're doing is in a van talking about life with your buddies for days, and so talk about bonding. I mean, when you're first starting, you don't, you're just piecing it together. You might have many days off. And we're hanging. We're like on a road trip at that point. And those moments are like huge.
We used to play this amazing game where we were listening to satellite radio. And, they would play bluegrass songs from like a pretty tight roster. Like you could kind of know what was coming up. And so you'd pick a song and you put $1 in for that song, and that was your pick. And the pot would fill up, and you could buy as many songs as you want. So I got a couple more I want to put $1 in, and this pot is filling up, in the center console there. And then boom, your song comes on. Yeah, you got free dinner that night, and that is rush like no other. That's it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, so him and I, we've been best friends since we were little kids, and now family, jobs, we don't get to hang out like that, like being on tour together. Right. Like, how has that molded like your mindset and evolved you as like an individual, not a musician, but like just as an individual, like things you're working through in your life? How have you come out on the other side of that?
Yeah. Well, it's, it's sort of like I was saying earlier about you transitioning in your life from like how things are when you're younger to when you're older. And maybe it's why people have midlife crises, because life changes you, and life, when you get older, you get a family, you can't afford to be, driving for 4 days with your bros, as fun as that sounds, that you have other obligations. People need to be home to take care of their kids. And, I think it's all about but you still have that foundation. I think it's about just making sure that, you can remember and still have some of those moments from time to time, of hanging out with your friends. But it's just accepting too that life is going to change. And just because you're not doing that road trip like you used to doesn't mean that you don't love each other and respect each other. And it's still, when you're on the road, we have a lot of time to hang and chat. And I look forward to that so much. I love being home. And then after I'm home for a while, like, man, I got to get back out with my boys. And so what's the dirt? Like, what's, you get to get gossip about what's been going on in the bluegrass world and who's doing what. And I love that. But it, life is going to change you, and your position in life is going to change, and how, what you're doing. And so I think it's, but that's okay. I think you have to accept that and dive into it. I would say one of the benefits of having more experience behind you than in front of you, when it comes to like the career, you could say that your hindsight is 2020. Nice little segue there. Whole purpose, we're actually here. New album coming out, 2020. 20 songs celebrating 20 years. Take us through like the concept of this, the writing process. Are y'all like a riff first, then put lyric first? Like just talk about this album and how it came out.
Well, we were getting ready to make a new record, and we had this milestone in front of us, and we wrote quite a few more songs for this record than we ever had. We wrote almost 50 new songs, 50 new original songs between the five of us. Wow. We brought to the table, and we trimmed that down to 20. So usually it's more like you write 20 and you trim that down to 10 or 11. But I think it speaks to the place that we're at in our career. Of course, we're always trying to grow and reach new people. And I think that the heart of that effort is in the songwriting and trying to write better songs that are more expressive and real and authentic than ever before. But at the same time, it's just a gift to our fans. More is better. 20 songs. Like, we have this core fan base. We know what they're all about. And why, if we've got all these great songs, are we holding things back just to play a game that we've been playing in some part for 20 years? And we know who those people are. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing, a celebration of the fact that most of what we do is a known quantity, and we have a great core group of fans who do so much to support us. Again, we're always trying to reach new people, and I think the table is set for that as well. But that was really the goal of this record, was just, you know, partly like it always is, to give you the latest and greatest, the songs that reflect all the life experience that we've accrued, but also this idea that we're not holding back, because why would we? We've built this great thing, this amazing community that's formed around our music. And so we wanted to give them as much as we possibly could.
And it's a gift to ourselves, because, you know, one of the tough things about, you know, making an album is cutting people's songs. It's no fun to be like, you know, we're not doing that song of yours, and you know, we're not doing that song of yours, and it's like, why don't we let's just do it for the art's sake, and you got that song, let's do that one, let's put that on there. What about that song you made? Yeah, let's just get it, you know, for us, where we don't have to be so critical of everything, and we can just like, man, you know, you wrote so many great songs, you wrote great songs, let's get them all in there. I feel like it's a gift to the fans in that way, and it's a gift to us ourselves artistically to just like not feel like we have to limit ourselves in what songs. That was fun. I enjoyed that, where you felt like, oh, the ceiling is much higher this time. Let's just put as much on as we can find time to do, you know.
And we kind of took the pressure off yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, after 20 years, let's have some fun with this and have it be a little less.
I think you earned it.
A little freaking less stressful, you know. And let's just do all the music we can and have fun. And we also didn't put a back end time limit. You know, a lot of times management is like, you know, you got this date and you got to be done, and we were trying to kind of push that back as much as we could. Fight, you know, our manager Sarah, she's looking at me like, what? But you know, because they have a big job to do, right, and they want to know, you know, and so we're like, we'll tell you when, you know, we'll just give us a little more time, you know. So we'll and they're like, okay, but we gotta, and I'm like, we know, we'll get there, you know. So we kind of tried to push back any sort of restrictions on time and of number of songs, and that was a relief. And it's, you know, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. Let's make it as fun as we can. Yeah.
Now, I know this is hard to believe for me now after listening to y'all's music, but you said I had to write a lot of bad songs to get to a good one. And that hit me, because out of everybody I've talked to about songwriting, you never hear anybody say that. But personally, I was like, that's the best way I've heard it put. It's like I had to go through all these. But did you ever really write a bad song?
Oh, shall we go to my voice memos and hear a little something? Oh, I mean,
maybe all fair.
It's like, it's first of all, I think, to answer your question, yes, and a lot of those just never even see the light of day. They maybe never even get finished, and that's the sort of spirit of trying new things again that underlies originality, that underlies the goal of this band. You're just always trying things, you know. And a lot of times I'll hear a song and I'll think, oh, I want to sort of write something in that style, and maybe it turns into something great, and that might be 5 minutes, and then I'm on to the next thing. But being open to just trying, because that's where a lot of people stop. And if you're willing to get in there and see what's possible. And so it's not necessarily writing them to completion. It's just about trying a lot of different things. And then your ultimate asset as a creator, as an artist, is your taste, is your ability to say, here's this thing I've got, it's good. Because if you don't have that guidepost, then what are you really doing? How do you know? I mean, how do you know when it's just a seed effort, you're trying something, or, that's what guides you as an artist. So you develop that over years, but I think that's the strongest intuition that a lot of artists have, and your greatest skill is just like knowing this is good, this is me, this is something that I want to share with the world. And so you start to feel that a little bit, and then you get on to finishing some songs. I came to writing songs a lot later than a lot of the guys in my band. I've always written music, a lot of instrumental music, but it's been great to be at that more beginner part of the learning curve again. You're reminded of how much baggage kind of comes with expertise and all 10,000 hours. You have expectations. And so, but songwriting is a great place to just be free and try things and express yourself. And I mean, if I had a nickel for every voice memo that will never see the light, I was actually going through them the other day, well over 1,000 on my phone. And I try to be diligent about deleting the ones that aren't good, but man, they pile up on there, and it's just ideas. And there's always that idea generator. And then you use that skill of your taste, your discernment to move things along and develop them into finished pieces.
This is a total tangent, but I just realized that all those voice memos on your iPhone are in the cloud, probably training AI. And you're going to hear one of those songs come up from a freaking
20 years from now.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, I've always felt like the microphone is the greatest therapist of all. Is if you're holding something inside, the best way to get it out is through that microphone, and it's very cathartic. But do you ever go back and cherry pick from those little notes? Like there might be a piece you don't leave.
For sure.
Definitely.
You can take, I've taken multiple pieces and put them together into a song. Like just one of them wasn't good enough on their own, but there was something, a kernel in one of them that was like, well, that one little piece is good. And that's a great songwriting tool, is to if you listen back to your voice memos or whatever, finding that kernel that's good, and you extract that out and maybe write something just based on that one little riff you had on the guitar or something, and the rest of it was garbage, or whatever. But, the other interesting thing is, when you're writing, it's, for me, and I don't know if this is advice, but I know for me, completing a bad song has always been good for me. I went through this phase where I was trying to always write just a hit, just something amazing. And I'd get just a little in, that's not it. And just get a little in, no, that's not it. And you never finish anything, but starting out with something you're not sure if it's going to be great, but seeing it through to completion and then putting it away, it has a real deep value. And I think that applies to a lot of things in life. Even if because then you've taken that step, and then you've sort of exercised that demon. You got whatever that thought is you were trying to do, at least it's complete and you can put it away. And you've learned something about songwriting and completing the song, even if you don't think it's going to be that great. To see it through to completion. Maybe there's that kernel in there you can find later,
I was told that your brain keeps working on any unfinished project. And the minute I was told that, I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Interesting, yeah.
Is that even subconsciously it's still working on those things.
Right, yeah, you got to put it to bed one way or another, you have to, and so if you complete a bad song, then at least you can delete it from the hard drive.
Yeah. Wow.
And those are kind of two different skills too. Oftentimes it feels like the fun part is writing the hook, and that part comes, but then creating the vehicle for that thing, that's a whole other skill. And that's kind of what Andy's talking about. So on the one hand, it's important to develop that skill, and that comes into play. But it also just speaks to the fact that showing up is part of the deal here. Showing up every time.
No, it's not funny. It's just literally, that seems to be a takeaway from every single person we've had on the couch, is literally just show up.
Yeah, and
coming.
I think
we've
probably all experienced people in our life who they want to be great, they want to be an entrepreneur, they want to be, but that will never be a substitute for just showing up day after day, year after year, and working at something that you believe in. It's not always the magic hook part, and so developing that other skill. And probably in the process, you put a lot of these questions to bed, and that allows you to use them as stepping stones and keep building on that rather than them sort of piling up like skeletons in the closet. You know, you've actually made something of that. Even if that song's never going to see the light of day, it's serving a much greater purpose in your life than something that you didn't, finish, you just put aside, because it's the showing up part that all the greats have in common, I think.
I think something I've taken away from y'all so far that is amazing to me is so many times people get removed from their audience, and y'all seem very connected to your audience, very with them in mind. And you hear a lot of people as they grow, their audience goes, well, I didn't like where they grew, or I didn't like that. And that doesn't seem to be the case with y'all.
Well, they are why we're able to do what we're doing. I mean, it'd be crazy if we didn't appreciate our audience. It's like, that's, obviously you're a musician for yourself first, but they support us. And we've had fans that we've had since the very beginning. Tonight we're playing the Station Inn, which is in Nashville, where we played and we're doing it because after 20 years we're going back to play the place we played the very first time we played a gig together as a band.
That's so special.
So a lot of our fans are coming from all over the country to this place. It's like ground zero for the Stringdusters. So 20 years is definitely time to reappreciate what we do, but reappreciate the fans that have been with us for so long.
That's incredible. So what is the weekend lineup? Y'all got the album coming out? What you got? Station Inn? Like, what else y'all got?
You got the Grand Ole Opry. We're hanging here with you guys right now.
Yeah.
We're doing a few more things like this. And
Whiskey Jam is one we're doing downtown.
Okay.
Which is like kind of a showcase thing downtown. And some other radio podcasts. We're doing WSM radio too, and the Opry. So album comes out, and we're stoked for this year. We're excited for it.
So I have to ask, but I hope I know the answer. A milestone project like this, celebrating the fans, celebrating your career, like, this isn't it, is it?
No.
Okay. Just double checking.
Oh,
okay.
No.
It didn't sound like it through this interview, but
No, it's just a moment to reminisce and reflect and celebrate, like you say. But we're lifers. I got a tattoo, man. I can't quit. I have a Stringduster tattoo. So I can't, if I quit, I'd have to get that covered up or something.
How did the name come about?
The name came through legendary banjo player Ben Eldridge from the Seldom Scene, whose son, Chris Eldridge, who's in the Punch Brothers, played guitar with us at the very beginning before Punch Brothers got going. And we were searching high and low. It's hard to find a good band name. And we were reflecting on another interview recently, and I was kind of sharing that it's great to like your own band name. And there's something cool about Stringdusters that just fits our music. And it was Ben's idea when we were staying at his house one time in Fredericksburg, which we did many times. And he came up with that, and we never looked back. We kind of loved it right from the drop, and it's cool. It's cool in the way that it sort of describes the music in some respect. I love that.
were there other band names that y'all were tossing around?
Oh, man. I wish we still had the list, because there's some doozies in there, bad stuff. And we played some gigs under different names. I think we had Broken Drought. Broken Drought was one.
Okay.
I mean, what a mouthful! I can't even say.
It doesn't roll.
You can't even say
two
it.
Downer words.
Two downer words. Yeah, right. That was I think Wheelhouse was one. There was another. I think there was a band already called Wheelhouse. But then the list. Once we couldn't do those, then the list just got worse and worse. So we were thankful that Ben gave us the Stringdusters. But
it's a great
and
name.
it's not getting any easier for young bands. I mean, shoosh.
What would be, as we're closing up here, what would be some advice for new people, new up and coming artists jumping in?
Yeah, like Chris said, I think in this day and age of immediate gratification, showing up over time is key. I think people, I don't know, but it seems like the young generation, in a lot of ways, are just with social media and that instant algorithm gratification programming, I think it may be hard to imagine sticking with something for 10 years or 20 years, but that is going to be a key to success for a lot of people. I mean, some may hit the jackpot and get big right away, but that's not going to be most people, and that's going to be a tiny percentage. And for everyone else, it's about showing up, remembering why you're doing it, the passion that you have for it. That's what'll keep you showing up. And not doing this for clicks or likes, but doing it because you love it and you enjoy it and it's meaningful to you.
Yeah, and we have such a short attention span these days, and always trying to kind of check out the next thing. But you can really fall in love with the process, and that's getting a little bit lost these days. But practicing for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, it seems less normal today than it did when we were getting going. For some reason, it seems like people are just spread more thin. But I'm here to tell you that there's so much amazing discovery in that process, and there's so much beyond just what you're learning about an instrument. It's about what you learn about yourself and life in general, and I think people are less apt to go down that road these days in the current world that we live in. But if you can commit yourself to something like that, great things happen, and they pay in ways that you don't expect. It's not just about a career. It's not just about clicks or likes. There are other benefits hiding in there that come from that level of commitment, and that's a really big part of it. You can't just be in it for the money. Mm-hmm. You really got to be in it for the other things that you can enjoy and glean and learn, and a lot of that comes from going really deep into things. And so it just a reminder to everyone who's listening that's out there.
Yeah. If you get into bluegrass for the money, that's wild.
Got this album coming out. I'm sure there's gonna be tour dates, everything y'all are doing, but in general, 20 years, Grammys, awards, what could be next? How do you set goals?
Yeah, the goals are, it's funny, I feel like they're more oriented towards the pure elements of the music, like just what we want to do, like what's fun for us, what music is fun to make, how much touring works with our lives now, so continuing to fine tune how to sort of integrate music into our lives is a big part of it. But we're hungry. The weird thing is we're just as hungry to grow and play and be excited about music as we were 20 years ago.
How?
I don't know. It's a gift. I think it's because of a lot of the stuff we talk about during the podcast. We like each other. We like hanging out together. We like the music we make. I don't know why would that change? I don't know why that would change. And, I think when you're doing something you truly love, there is a bit of an infinite well of inspiration, that just, it's infinite. The inspiration can be infinite if your intentions are pure. Mm-hmm. And if you're tuned into that original, source of why you're doing this. The inspiration just doesn't go away if you're doing it for the pure reasons of artistic.
I think the argument is that what I've always heard is when your passion becomes your work, it becomes work, and you kind of end up falling out of love with your work, not the passion. But it's been so invigorating to hear you not from your perspective, not have ever lost that.
You got to go back to it, because you can get involved, just completely involved in the work element of it. That's totally normal. I think that's what this album means to me anyway, is reconnecting with that original source material of why we're doing this. And it's that well of inspiration is still there. You just got to remember to tune into that and remember to have your motivation be that and not just the bills and the finance and the freaking all the rest of it.
And also we're talking a lot about the album, but the main thing that we do is play shows, and we've created a show environment, musical, crowd, venues, all these things. We know what we like to do, and we get to go out and do that many, many times a year. And that can be really challenging at some points, but even getting through those challenges, it's not always just fun and amazing, but it mostly is. And we've created an environment and a program with our shows that really lets everyone shine, lets everyone do our thing. And again, like Andy mentioned, the camaraderie and the support, it's not all about taking the spotlight, but if you've created an environment that you really enjoy, then there's a lot of work and late nights at the airport and a lot of travel and a lot of being away from home, but that payoff is there in our shows. And we love to shows. We love to play shows. We love to play. I mean, we're playing all day long. We're sitting backstage jamming. We'll play with other bands, and they're always so surprised. Some bands don't warm up at all before they go on stage, and we're playing for like hours in the day before we play a show. So that love for playing and the music, and we're just playing like traditional bluegrass tunes that we love, and we'll play them over and over, and it just never gets old. So sharing that's a real engine behind what we do.
That's incredible.
I got to ask about the song, Cold Beverages.
Yes.
So, we've often talked bluegrass and hip hop backgrounds, and I hear this song and I'm like, they've done it. They've meshed rap and bluegrass. And that was G-Love?
Yep.
Yeah, G-Love, yep.
And how did that come about?
I don't actually quite remember how that came about. Wait, our manager, we need to get our manager a microphone because I feel like she knows how this came about. Oh, we have the same. Boom.
Yeah.
And I know our guitar player Annie Falco is kind of buddies with him a little bit, and so we were looking to do a different collaboration. I know we were like, what, and G-Love, he's been around forever, right? And so that was a good management connection. And he's such a great dude, and we were just, there was instant chemistry. But yeah, we did it. We got in the studio. We didn't know how we were going to do it, and he's so creative, and we're creative, and we just got in the studio, and we're like, we just started, kind of riffing and jamming, and how can we turn his song? He was so open to anything because it's his song, G-Love, but we're like, what if we put this, the banjo solo here, and then we did a big stop here, and then he was just whatever. He was so into recreating his song with us.
It seemed like a crowd pleaser. It really did. And seeing y'all all jam together was amazing. My wife was sitting there kind of in the background. She's writing a book right now, and when we got done, I'd played it about 3 times. My daughter, I woke up this morning, she was walking around the house saying, I like cold beverages. and my wife, sitting over there typing, she goes, well, who doesn't like cold beverages? And that was last night. And so I didn't say anything back. I went to sleep. I woke up this morning, my daughter's, walking around singing it, and I handed her coffee. And I was like, well, here's a hot beverage. She's like, really? Really? We're still talking about this from last night?
Love it. That's great. Yeah, right. Who doesn't love cold beverages?
Right.
Come on. That is a crowd pleaser. We should probably get that into the show at some point.
Probably should. Speaking of shows, wrapping up, let's plug how our listeners could find shows, get tickets, social media, podcast. Plug your stuff.
Yeah.
TheStringdusters.com is home base for everything we got going on, shows, etc. And then we're in all the usual places on social media.
Yeah, also the String Dusters, I think, on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
There's a lot going on right now. So yeah, check out our social media, check out the website, all kind of amazing new merch. We got the vinyl is out. So yeah, new album. And Panda has a great podcast too, which you should plug. Inside the Musician's Brain is amazing. He talks with all kinds of incredible artists, and it's in depth and interesting, and you definitely should check that out.
Definitely will check out that podcast for sure. Thank y'all for coming on.
Thank you guys so much. This has been fun.
This has been incredible, from the creativity and innovation to the historic homage of the ones that came before you. I hope y'all get enough credit to understand that like y'all are one of one, like
Thank you.
as a band. And we are very grateful y'all took the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Starting this podcast based around people that brought great things to Nashville that aren't from Nashville. We're honored to have y'all. I feel like y'all have checked off every box, even with the city changing. We have loved to embrace the change, but we also love paying homage. And I feel like y'all do exactly that with your music. And like I said, I'm honored to have y'all on the couch. Thank you so much. The Infamous Stringdusters, Music
Yeah.
City Mindset Couch. If you liked what you saw today, please like, share, subscribe. We appreciate every single one of y'all. And thank you so much. Tune in for the next time.
For the love of Nashville, tune into the next episode.